What happened to Amanda Bynes? There was a time when Amanda Bynes felt almost permanently attached to American pop culture. Her face existed everywhere. Nickelodeon reruns, movie posters, teen magazines, late-night interviews playing on television sets in suburban living rooms. For millions of people growing up in the late 1990s and early 2000s, Amanda Bynes represented something that now feels strangely rare. A young celebrity who still appeared safe, predictable, stable. Parents trusted her. Audiences felt comfortable watching her. Hollywood executives believed she could transition smoothly from child star into long-term mainstream celebrity. And for a while, that future looked completely inevitable, which may be part of why her story still feels so unsettling years later. Because celebrity collapses rarely begin with obvious disaster. At first, the changes are subtle, small enough for people to dismiss. A slightly uncomfortable interview, an appearance that feels different somehow, a strange online post people laugh off at the time. Then eventually, audiences start looking backward, and suddenly those same moments no longer feel harmless anymore. They feel like warning signs. That's one of the strange things about public fame. People usually recognize the collapse only after it has already happened. Years later, audiences revisit old interviews, old photographs, old late-night appearances, and suddenly begin noticing details that once felt completely normal. A smile that looks slightly forced. A pause that lasts too long. A joke that now feels uncomfortable in hindsight. At the time, though, almost nobody thinks they are watching the beginning of a public unraveling. They think they are simply watching another celebrity move through fame. And Amanda Bynes entered adulthood during the exact moment celebrity culture itself was transforming into something far more invasive. The internet no longer wanted distance from celebrities. It wanted constant visibility, constant access, constant emotional exposure, which meant Amanda wasn't simply struggling in public. Millions of strangers were slowly watching the transformation happen in real time. At first, most people thought they were watching another former child star trying to grow up. Years later, the story looked very different. Long before the headlines and internet speculation, Amanda Bynes was considered one of the safest investments in youth entertainment. That mattered more than people realize. Hollywood has always depended on marketable personalities. But child stars are different. Studios don't simply want talent, they want reliability. And Amanda seemed naturally built for that system. She was funny without sounding rehearsed, confident without appearing arrogant, relatable without looking overly manufactured. Very early on, producers noticed she understood comedy instinctively. Not in the polished, trained way many young actors perform. Amanda often felt effortless, which helped separate her from countless other child performers competing for attention in the late 1990s. By the time Nickelodeon fully invested in her, the network already understood what they had. The Amanda Show didn't just make her popular. It made her culturally familiar, and familiarity is one of the most powerful forms of celebrity. Because the most successful celebrities are not always the most talented. Often they are simply the people audiences begin emotionally associating with comfort, routine, safety, a specific phase of life. That's part of what made Amanda Bynes unusually valuable during that period. She didn't feel distant from audiences, she felt accessible, like someone viewers had grown up beside. And in the early 2000s, Hollywood desperately wanted stars who could maintain that illusion. At the time, the entertainment industry was still recovering from years of tabloid scandals involving young celebrities. Studios wanted personalities that felt stable enough for mass audiences. Amanda fit that image perfectly. And because of that, audiences began associating her with a very specific emotional atmosphere: comfort, lightness, familiarity. For many viewers, Amanda Bynes didn't feel like a distant celebrity. She felt connected to routine, to afternoons after school, to sleepovers, to an era of entertainment that now feels strangely permanent inside people's memories. Which may be why the contrast between her early image and later public struggles eventually felt so emotionally jarring to people. Not because audiences truly knew her, but because they believed they understood the role she occupied inside American pop culture. Audiences began associating Amanda Bynes with comfort, with routine, with an era of entertainment that now feels strangely distant. At the time, American celebrity culture still operated differently. Social media barely existed. Most stars could maintain carefully controlled public images. Mistakes disappeared faster. Embarrassment faded. Public breakdowns weren't endlessly archived online. And because of that, Amanda entered adulthood during one of the last periods where Hollywood still believed celebrity images could remain stable forever. Then her career expanded. Movies like What a Girl Wants, She's the Man, Hairspray slowly pushed her beyond children's television and into mainstream celebrity culture. For audiences, the transition looked smooth. But looking back now, there's something uncomfortable about how quickly Hollywood expected young stars to evolve. One moment they are children. The next, they're expected to become profitable adults, glamorous public figures, and emotionally stable brands. And sometimes the pressure of maintaining that image becomes invisible, right until the moment it starts breaking apart. What makes stories like this uncomfortable is how ordinary the beginning usually looks. Audiences often imagine public collapse arriving dramatically, but most celebrity transformations begin quietly. Amanda gradually stepped away from acting. Interviews became less frequent. Public appearances started feeling slightly unfamiliar. Nothing looked catastrophic yet. And maybe that's why almost nobody reacted strongly in the beginning. At the time, many people probably assumed Amanda Bynes was simply trying to transition out of child stardom, which in Hollywood is already one of the most psychologically unstable periods a celebrity can experience. Because eventually, former child stars encounter a difficult realization. The version of themselves audiences loved most often no longer exists. And Hollywood rarely teaches young celebrities how to survive that transition emotionally. It only teaches them how to remain visible. At one point, Amanda announced she was retiring from acting. The decision confused audiences. She was still famous, still recognizable, still commercially valuable. From the outside, walking away looked irrational. But fame often feels very different from the inside, especially for people who spent most of their lives learning how to perform likable versions of themselves for public approval. And around this same period, celebrity culture itself was changing rapidly. The internet was beginning to erase the separation between private identity, public identity, and online performance. For decades, celebrities still had distance, mystery, privacy, time away from public attention. Then suddenly, visibility became constant. Celebrities were expected to remain online, react instantly, stay emotionally available, and continuously perform authenticity. That pressure changed fame psychologically, because public image used to depend on controlling information. Now it depended on surviving nonstop exposure. And maybe audiences underestimated how destabilizing that transition could become, especially for people who became famous before social media fully existed. Amanda Bynes entered adulthood during one of the worst possible moments for a former child star. The internet was becoming more obsessive, more reactive, more permanent, and increasingly instability attracted more attention than stability. At the time, though, most people still treated celebrity breakdowns like temporary entertainment, not long-term psychological deterioration. That misunderstanding would shape almost everything that happened next. Because at some point, audiences stopped waiting for Amanda Bynes movies and started waiting for the next alarming headline. The shift happened gradually, so gradually that many people barely noticed it at first. But once celebrity culture begins associating somebody with instability instead of talent, the entire atmosphere around that person changes. Every appearance starts feeling loaded. Every interview feels uncomfortable. Every silence creates speculation. As the years passed, Amanda's public behavior became increasingly difficult for audiences to categorize. Traffic incidents, strange tweets, disorienting interviews, unpredictable online interactions. And once unpredictability enters celebrity culture, public perception changes extremely fast. At first, audiences react with curiosity, then irony, then mockery, and eventually concern. But by the time concern arrives, the internet has usually already transformed the situation into entertainment. That may be one of the darkest aspects of modern fame. Audiences often don't realize they are watching somebody deteriorate psychologically. They experience it as content, a headline, a meme, a reposted clip, a screenshot shared thousands of times. The internet consumes instability in fragments. And over time, the celebrity slowly stops feeling like a real person. They become a public narrative instead, a symbol, a spectacle, a cautionary tale. And Amanda Bynes became one of the earliest major examples of a celebrity unraveling under nonstop digital observation. Photos circulated constantly. Headlines became increasingly aggressive. Comment sections turned cruel. And maybe the strangest part was how quickly audiences adapted to watching the situation unfold. At first, many people reacted with shock. Then eventually, the instability became normalized. Another headline, another clip, another confusing public appearance. The internet kept moving. But for celebrities trapped inside those cycles, the experience doesn't disappear when audiences scroll away. It becomes part of their identity permanently. People stop discussing her performances. Instead, conversations shifted toward her appearance, her behavior, and whether she still resembled the version audiences remembered. That word appears constantly in celebrity transformation stories. Unrecognizable, not only physically, emotionally, socially, psychologically. And maybe that's why stories like this feel strangely personal to audiences. The public memory of Amanda Bynes had frozen somewhere around the mid-2000s. Funny, bright, safe, predictable. Almost frozen in time. And maybe that's part of what made later appearances feel so emotionally disorienting. The public version of Amanda Bynes had remained young inside people's memories. But the real person behind the image was still changing, still aging, still struggling. Human beings continue evolving. Celebrity images often do not. So every later appearance created a disturbing contrast between who audiences remembered and who they believed they were seeing now. But nostalgia can distort perception. People often mourn older celebrity versions the same way they mourn older periods of their own lives, which means audiences sometimes react emotionally to transformation itself, especially when the transformation feels visible, uncomfortable, and impossible to fully explain. And once internet culture decides somebody has changed too much, recovery becomes almost impossible to separate from spectacle. Every attempt to heal becomes public. Every setback becomes searchable. Every appearance becomes comparison. That kind of pressure can distort a person's relationship with themselves over time, especially for someone who spent years being rewarded for maintaining a specific image. One of the strange contradictions of celebrity culture is that audiences constantly demand authenticity from famous people. But they also become uncomfortable when celebrities evolve beyond the versions the public originally loved. And somewhere inside that contradiction, many public identities begin slowly collapsing. Not all at once, not dramatically, but slowly enough that audiences often mistake the transformation for entertainment until years later. Then eventually people look back and wonder when everything started feeling different. The uncomfortable answer is that the change usually begins long before anyone realizes they're watching it happen. There's a reason stories involving former child stars continue affecting audiences decades later. People feel like they grew up with them, which creates a strange illusion. Fans begin believing they know the real person behind the image. But child celebrities often spend years adapting themselves around audience expectations, studio demands, media narratives, and commercial branding. Eventually, it becomes difficult to separate who they truly are from who the public expects them to remain forever. Amanda Bynes became famous during an era that rewarded constant likability. Then she entered an internet era that monetized instability. That transition destroyed many public figures, not necessarily because fame became larger, but because modern celebrity culture stopped allowing people to disappear quietly. Every transformation became permanent. Every mistake became searchable. Every breakdown became replayable. And maybe that permanence is what makes modern celebrity culture feel uniquely exhausting. In earlier decades, public embarrassment eventually faded. People moved on. But the internet created permanent archives of instability. Moments that once would have disappeared after a few days can now follow public figures forever. A single interview, a photograph, a clip recorded at the wrong moment. Years later, audiences continue revisiting them, reanalyzing them, reframing them, which creates another strange problem. Celebrities are often expected to emotionally outgrow moments the internet permanently preserves. And for former child stars, that pressure becomes even more complicated. Because many audiences subconsciously resist watching childhood icons change naturally. People want nostalgia to remain frozen, but human beings don't remain frozen. That conflict exists underneath many celebrity transformation stories. The public keeps searching for older versions of people who no longer exist. And eventually, some celebrities begin chasing those older versions too. And maybe the most uncomfortable part is this. At several moments, the decisions Amanda made probably felt understandable from inside the pressure surrounding her. That's how many celebrity transformations work. The public often looks backward and asks, how could this happen? But inside the moment itself, the person involved may simply be trying to survive. Expectations, scrutiny, loneliness, or the fear of becoming irrelevant. And sometimes the exact decisions that feel emotionally necessary in one period of life later become the turning points people analyze forever. Today, Amanda Bynes remains one of the clearest examples of how unstable fame can become when somebody grows up entirely inside public attention. But what keeps audiences fascinated by her story years later isn't only controversy. It's contrast. People remember the version of Amanda Bynes that once felt untouchable, the teenager Hollywood trusted. The actress audiences assumed would remain successful forever. The face connected to a very specific era of American entertainment. And maybe that's why stories involving former child stars continue lingering in public memory, because they force audiences to confront something uncomfortable about celebrity culture itself. The public loves transformation, until the transformation becomes too real, until audiences stop feeling entertained and start feeling unsettled instead. Because stories like Amanda Bynes force people to confront an uncomfortable possibility. Sometimes the public does not simply witness celebrity collapse. Sometimes it participates in it. Then suddenly the same audience that once helped build the image begins mourning the version they preferred. Not necessarily the real person, just the memory. Maybe that's why so many people still search for stories like Amanda Bynes years later. Not only because they want answers, but because they want to reconnect with the feeling attached to the version they remember. And celebrity culture has a difficult relationship with memory. It rewards reinvention, but it also punishes people for changing too visibly, especially women, especially former child stars, especially celebrities audiences emotionally connected to during their own youth. Over time, the public often stops asking, "How is this person doing?" and starts asking, "What happened to the version I remember?" Those are not the same question. And somewhere between those two things, many celebrities slowly disappear. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos. See you in the next one.